All right. So um, I've actually had the pleasure of knowing Rich for a while. We used to work together at Forrester Research. He was CTO and CIO there. He moved on, I moved on. You've been in a couple of interesting places, Target Software, JD Power. You're now at Proquest,
That's right.
and you're the CIO at Proquest.
CIO, and I also lead content operations.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit about Proquest.
Great, Maribel. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I loved your introduction. We can talk a lot about composable applications.
Excellent.
Um,
Sounds like great cocktail fodder, doesn't it? Composable applications.
well, over cocktails always.
Yes.
So Proquest, we're a private company, roughly $1 billion SaaS provider in the academic library market. Probably not one that you guys are all that familiar with. But we build huge online services and deliver content all over the world. We just signed a deal a few months ago with the government of Botswana to provide information access all across that country. So when I say global, we're really global.
You're really global.
We're
Let me
really
get,
global.
I think you have a few slides you want to
I
actually
do.
demonstrate as well. So I'll make sure
I think you have
this.
you have the clicker.
Yes. And now you do.
Excellent.
So,
So we host over 1 billion documents and 5 or 10 petabytes of content, growing by millions and millions every month, with over 70 million visitors last year from 50 countries all around the world, from about 10,000 institutional customers. So very, very large scale. And we're in the midst of a big transition to cloud computing that I think will be interesting for us to talk about.
yeah, absolutely. So with that, yeah, show us a little bit of what that looks like.
Sure, and I just have a couple of slides just to provide a little context. So think about us as Google for really geeky PhD academics. So we ingest content from books first published in 1200, information from the British Library, the Library of Congress, and actually all of Vogue magazine going back to 1892.
I knew there was a reason why I liked you.
We'll have to put you in touch with Condé
Excellent.
Nast.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So this is a little bit about what Proquest does, so that gives you some background of what they're looking at. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is cloud computing, because I think it actually is essential if we look at mobile strategies and if we look at strategies in general. And I know that you've actually been doing cloud for a while.
Since 2006?
Yes, give us some context about what you're doing there, the joys, the sorrows.
Well, joys and sorrows are always interesting in the cloud environment. And when I say cloud, I'm really talking about public clouds. So I've been with Proquest for about 4 years, and starting about 3 years ago, we've gone really big into public cloud using Amazon and AWS. So our biggest applications are migrating into public cloud actually in 2 months.
Was that considered risky?
I think it's something that when we originally started talking about it, there was a little concern from the board of directors that this was a little scary and new. But over the last couple of years, as we started our cloud first strategy, as I said 3 years ago, and what we did is we started building some newer applications and newer products in the cloud, so we got our feet wet. We also found what worked and what didn't work. So brand new products that we built in public cloud have been awesome. And customers love them, really easy to access, really easy to sell. Taking some of our legacy applications and just sort of bulk shifting them over the cloud, not quite as awesome. Not quite as awesome.
I think that's probably an experience that everybody in the room can resonate with.
Yeah.
So when you were thinking of cloud, what did cloud allow you to do that you didn't think you could do another way, particularly public cloud? How has it helped your innovation strategy or your product strategy?
Sure. On the innovation side, the thing that public cloud really helps us with is cycle time. So when we get a new idea for an application, our engineers can have environments up and running in under an hour. And we can start, work on building something new for customers. Our market has a lot of seasonality. In May and June, we're hammered. In July and August, there's really not much going on. So our applications are very, very amenable to the ebbs and flows of demand that cloud that public cloud really enables. When you think about why we didn't do private cloud, and I should have put in an awesome chart about this, but for us, if we have to buy full capacity to handle all of our peak load, most of the time it sits around doing nothing. So public cloud allows us to do a little bit of arbitrage there. And as the public cloud environments have become more sophisticated and our ability to consume services has become much more granular, it really helps us size our cloud spending to the demand and capacity that we see from the market.
So it got you up faster. It allowed you to have a robust infrastructure to basically deal with the variability of what happens in your organization. You've probably seen a lot change in cloud. You talked a little bit
dramatically.
You talked a little bit about the concept of things that were existing services not necessarily migrating so easily and new services migrating quite well. Any other sort of lessons learned out of that?
I think the thing that's been a real lesson learned for us is, and this winds up being very tightly linked together. So, in addition to all of the internal technology stuff that I think most people in the room deal with, I also run product development, so I build all the products for our company. So on the product side, time to market and being able to use composable services from our cloud providers, allows us to respond to market opportunities just far faster than we were ever able to. It also leads to much greater developer satisfaction. The engineers, every engineering team that we've moved over to public cloud comes back and says, oh my God, this is so much better. So it makes it easier for us to retain people. When people get we're always in a bit of a war for talent. I'm sure we all feel that pain. But when we find that we very, very rarely lose to other companies. The time when we lose people are when they go to Apple or Google, and that's kind of a tough one to fight against. But it really has helped our engineering and developer productivity and morale. And the teams that are on cloud, if you had to take it away from them, would fight you to tooth and nail.
Yeah, so the other thing that people have been talking a lot about is big data and analytics. And obviously the nature of your service, I think, leads you to being more into the analytics side of it than not. Any concepts that you'd like to share with folks about how you have approached the big data and analytics, technology stack, solutions, issues with dealing and wrestling data?
Sure, and big data and analytics, and the topic that was just a big one of security. Security, and especially cognitive applications. If you look at I'll sort of digress for a second just to pick up the cognitive piece, but one of the things that, and I'm not going to go into too many details for obvious reasons, but by being exposed to this huge international academic community, it's like attackers on steroids. Everyone is going after us all the time. So we've actually spent some time investing in hardening our applications, but having the applications actually learn about attack patterns and be able to identify and then react to them in real time, which has been hugely powerful. And in fact, we're using some of the cloud analytical capabilities to be able to mine through our data to discover attack patterns and then prime the system to be able to recognize them more rapidly the next time around. So that's been really, really interesting. I also wanted to, I think I've got this is a little bit of an eye chart slide, but if you want to know the sort of stuff that we're using, this is a good sense. If you look at our analytical platform, we're analyzing customer usage data, and right now we're at about a few terabytes, 130 billion rows, and growing by huge amounts every month. We also provide analytics, so not only are we consuming a lot of data, but we're providing analytical capabilities to thousands of people all over the world, because we link our analytics directly into our customers so that they can see exactly how people are using the system. And this is another area where we've leveraged cloud really extensively. But we sort of moved up the stack, and we went with, we're using the Amazon's Redshift cloud sort of prepackaged data warehouse environment. And again, that was a time to market consideration for us. So we were able, and this is an example of our cloud analytic applications are designed and role-based. So we provide one set of information to our account managers who are out selling customers, and a separate set of information to our product managers who are deciding what new products they're going to build. But all of this is driven by cloud and cloud analytics. And again, the cycle time, we were up and running in 3 or 4 months, and we're delivering value after 3 or 4 months. Not all the value, but at least some of it.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that ability to get started fairly quickly, demonstrate a quick win, give people access to data that they hadn't seen before. Also, you mentioned the concept of keeping your employees happy. All those are huge wins, right? So this is M6, right? We're talking about mobile as well, and your content is apparently accessible on mobile. Now, I know that you have, mobile's been a lot about the app, right? We've talked a lot about the app. And it seems that we could even say that we've been app happy in mobile. And I think you have a slightly different perspective on mobile and what's going on there. Tell us how you approach the mobile problem.
Sure.
And is it working?
Well, it seems to be working, though I'm probably a bit of a contrarian, so I may have to watch out for some of the app developers over cocktails. But
I promise no one will stab you in the back. You're safe here.
But we actually have, in looking at our market, there's a lot of demand for mobile access to our content. We provide access to undergraduates and grad students all over the world. There's not a huge amount of demand for apps, though, and especially among our paying customers, the librarians and institutions. Pretty much the last thing they want is to have 50,000 new people show up trying to download apps and get things set up at the beginning of every academic semester. That's not super popular. So we've been going with a responsive design approach. And we also do a lot of, I also run user experience, and we go out and we spend a lot of time talking to our end users. And what we hear from them is, actually they value and they really like the responsive experience. And, there are a couple of use cases that they sort of think of sometimes for an app, but they're actually happier most of the time with responsive than they would be with an app. Now, that's just for us. I'm not saying that that's for everyone in the world, but I think it's really important to really understand the use case, because for our use case, an app makes a little bit less sense, especially with customers in China. We have a large user population in China. We'd have to build a whole different set of apps for China and a whole different set of apps for parts of sub-Saharan Africa, where we also, and the Middle East, where we deliver a lot as well.
Yeah, I think the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think it's really important to getting back to the essence of who's the user and how do they want to use your services. And sometimes an app makes sense, sometimes responsive makes sense. It doesn't mean that you'd necessarily have to pick one or the other as the other issue, right? It's basically different ways of different deployment methods for different use cases. So, and in your use cases, responsive is working fine, so that's great. So one of the things I like to do in these conferences is ask everybody that's here to leave the audience with a piece of advice, something that you think they should do and something that you think that they should avoid. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Wow, that's a good question. So in terms of something that people should do, I was struck by some of the comments from the gentleman who was up just before us from VMware, and really one of the things that we had to get through in order to make our public cloud transition a reality was actually some of the biggest objectors were within the IT organization, and they were really nervous about letting some of our content go out into public cloud. And very similar to I may have to steal the picture of the fence with everyone driving around it. Getting over this notion of sort of perfect security, which is created by rigid control, it just doesn't work. And we're actually moving much more towards that sort of Google model of assuming that all of our stuff is on the internet. People are attacking it all the time. It turns out to be pretty accurate. And we just have to, the apps have to be individually aware and not
Yeah.
assume that there's any layer of security. Everything in our world could be compromised, and we don't pretend that. So I would say moving, there's a value in moving rapidly and in not letting some of the organizational inertia slow you down. And we've certainly found that. And I'm a big fan of user experience and engagement with end users. And I actually go out and spend time with our customers and our end users, as much as I can. So getting more involved with the end users and customers who drive, whoever they are in your organization, and being willing to be a little bit, be a pioneer and be courageous and take that step. I think that's what I want to leave people with.
Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a huge discussion in security about how much security is good enough. But I really think it gets back to thinking, what are the crown jewels and how do you protect the crown jewels?
Right.
We don't have the moats anymore. We don't have a perimeter anymore. Everything's out there. So if everything's out there, certain things need to be secure, and maybe your marketing collateral doesn't need to have the same level of security as your intellectual property. So I think we're moving into that brave new world of security, and I'm excited to see that you've done so much in the public cloud and that you're doing great things with analytics, and I look forward to seeing you at another M6 and hearing about what's going on next.
Well, thank you, Maribel.
And you'll be around for the evening activities if anybody wants to ask you a question?
I am, and would love to chat about anything.
Perfect. So with that, I think it's time for everybody to have a break. Round of applause for Rich.